Hey, Jegaysus.
Hi, heathens.
Hi, friends.
We're back.
It's us again, in your screen and headphones.
It's another episode of the Unholy Trinity. So last week, we talked about religious stupidity and Christian nationalism. And we had a grand old time. You should go check out that episode if you haven't already. This week, we're going to talk about what I would like to consider the honey boo-boo of church mistakes. Just the gold star winner of American Idol of Christian nationalism itself, Bethel Church.
And specifically Bill Johnson.
I'm never going to unsee Bill Johnson as honey boo-boo. Thank you for that.
He is now honey boo-boo. You're welcome. We look forward
no
to
hate
you
to
posting.
Alana, by the way. Like, you know, it's not her
Chick
fault that she
nugget
was made
family
into
and
this.
tell me anything different.
But before we do that, we should catch up a little bit. How are you guys doing?
I'm okay. I mean, you know, the same old, running around, changing the world by being the Messiah. What's there to report on?
As one does.
As one does. No, I mean, I was telling you off screen, just fighting 12-year-olds, which is exhausting. I just found out, for those of you who don't know, my, account is sometimes controversial, and 12-year-olds don't know how to handle their emotions.
True.
But I found out Instagram
For another
lets
14
you
years.
block any age of people you don't want. And I did not know
Really?
that. Yeah, if you go to your settings on Instagram, you can set age limits, and
Is it like block boomers? Because that would be my...
you can do, I don't think you can, but I think it's an 18 and or 21 button, and you can set it by region. So you can be like, I do not want 18-year-olds from America, but like 18-year-olds from Canada are fine because they're more mature. And I was like,
That's
I'm
incredible.
gonna probably use that button in the future. TikTok.
Are there
needs
any
it.
other age
TikTok
categories?
needs it. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far into it because
They need to have like a 35 and up or 35 and down. Like a 50
as long
and
as
up
they
or down.
get the minors off of these things, like, I'm totally okay with that. Like, not saying that they shouldn't have Instagram. It's fine. It's whatever. I just don't want to interact with them.
But what if the Queen of Heathens could block all males
Oh my God,
above
could you
the
imagine?
age of 35?
glorious.
Why has this not started as its own platform yet?
But then, like,
That would be
On the
amazing.
Sandry platform, can we do that?
just like
Let's
males
do that.
under the age of 35.
Unless you can prove like your homosexuality and or allyship, because I'd still want to be your friend.
There should be a quiz. What is a key? Go.
Can you still be a misogynist if you have a wife? Yes or no?
That's a good one.
Oh, I am so mad at that wrangling little loquacious stammer. Like, I can't stand that little motherfucker.
Wait,
okay.
this is about a person? Somebody,
Yeah.
He's not a
I didn't get
person.
the reference.
So, like, my week has been relatively boring outside of, I heard that my mom, who I'm estranged from, is teaching my youngest sister that the world will be ending soon and that she needs to, like, prepare. And so naturally I was furious. But that's besides the point. The other interesting part of my week was this, lovely, faceless old man on the internet telling me that I was a misandrist and then, like, trying to call me a cunt, but, like, safe for the algorithm. So he, like, used an extra letter and then tried to tell me that actually that word was, the word that he used was slang for a female clown. And I'm like, first of all, dog, the fact that you would even know slang for a female clown is disturbing to me. Second of all, no, it's not, because I looked it up on, like, every platform because I cover my bases. And I was like, let me see if I'm wrong. I wasn't. So he was calling me a misandrist cunt. Sorry for the wording, but that's what it was. And so I was like, I'm not really trying to deal with you. So I tagged in a bunch of guys and was like, look what it's like to be a woman on the internet. Bye. Not necessarily because I need them to then defend me, but just because it's like, I think sometimes people, and maybe especially men, don't really realize just the kind of like daily abuse that shows up. But Andrew, being the absolute angel that he is, tried to engage with this man respectfully.
Good luck.
This creature had the interpersonal skills of a dead cockroach's twitching leg. Like, it just...
Specific.
Very specific.
Like, well, it's what I pictured. I was like, a cockroach? No, let's make it worse. Dead cockroach, the twitch. The death twitch? That's this man.
The death.
He said, I've been married since 1988, and I have daughters and granddaughters. I was like, Thomas Jefferson owned slaves and had black kids. Like, this isn't exactly the win you think it is.
That's perfect.
Sir.
No, sir. You don't.
I feel like we just need a whole bunch of those analogies, though. Like, what else is there?
I just kind of want you to, from now on, to just go, how can I hate men? Yeah. I know this man right here, and I have really invested in his culture, and I understand. Like, and I just think you could just totally...
I smelt 4-in-1 body wash once.
Right.
It was okay.
Listen, I have supplied Axe to a man before in my life. I've supported his wearing of cargo shorts.
Well, don't do that.
I understand his culture. I can't hate men. Okay.
I have been present in their most holy of days of tailgating. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
Mm-hmm. I think, honestly, the thing, I think that, like, a lot of people on the internet, men specifically, don't actually understand that for the majority of my life, and even still to this day, I tend to be, like, one of the guys. And, I mean, even, like, right now, I work out in the mornings, and the morning class is primarily dudes, and they have sort of embraced me as one of the guys. But the thing is, not just this group, but just having grown up as one of the guys, that's why I have a problem with men. Because I hear the shit that they say when they think that they're not in the presence of women. Like, that's the issue, right?
It always goes back to the whole, we're in presence of mixed company. And it's like, what are you like when you're not?
Exactly. And I'm not saying that, like, being in mixed company or, like, I think the idea of being in mixed company and therefore you should be nicer, all that does is mask that you're a piece of shit.
I have never thought about that.
But, like...
Really?
No, not with that phrase. You know, like, yes, the general concept, but not like every time my grandmother said we're in mixed company, she was just saying, I'm kind of a tool sometimes. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
To be fair, like, I'll hold opinions or beliefs that maybe, like, we wouldn't be comfortable saying in front of everyone, but I think that...
being offensive. Yeah.
But if we have a lot of opinions and beliefs that we're not comfortable saying in front of other people, they're deserving of examination and, like, reflection. Yes, maybe, like, talking about it with your therapist to get, like, an honest
If you're going to withhold anti-Muslim rhetoric because you notice that there is somebody who's Muslim in the room, then maybe you should see why you...
Maybe you're with Muslims and you need to rethink that. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. So we're a little bit off the rails here. But yeah, that's what happened this week. And the only way that... So he was, like, responding to my comments, like, 5 hours after I told him that I was not going to be engaging with him anymore. And the only way that I got him to stop responding was I was like, I just need you to know that I get paid by TikTok for engagement. So the more comments you leave, the more money I make. And then he was like, oh.
It's the greatest comeback, and it's funny because they don't know how much that is, so it works every time. As far as they know, it could be millions,
like, it's
not
money, but just the fact that they think that, like, they're causing me to profit, they're like, oh, can't do that. And I'm like, it's 25 cents.
I wish I could profit more. I want people to go buy my merch and just send me pictures of them burning it. That's all I want. I want it to become a trend.
You know... I saw this video. It's made circles, like, multiple times. Someone I'm friends with on TikTok, they'll say that they'll show pictures of the things they bought with money they made after showing a hate comment. It's like that was, yep, you said that, but look at this opal ring. Trade off. And I was like, I love that. I love that for you. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Yeah. Like, and honestly, it's the quickest way to get people to shut up, which is my other favorite thing. Because it's like, I let them talk and talk and talk and talk, and then I'm like, hey, just FYI, you're paying my bills, bitch. Like, then move on.
Andrew, how was your week? Sorry, we were talking around.
So I had a very good work week. I won't talk about work on here, but I things outside of this have been going well for me.
Great.
I planted... Okay, so on my TikTok, you'll see that it says, like, Bible, mysticism, and gardening, and justice work. Okay, I talk about justice work, I talk about mysticism, I talk about Bible. Don't talk about gardening a lot. You want my gardening content? Go to my Instagram. I post on there all the time about the frogs that are on my blooming bromeliads and the giant grasshoppers that are beside baby frogs. And today, I took clippings of what is called a Peruvian apple cactus. A Peruvian apple cactus is about as thick around as like a thigh. It's a big old cactus, and they grow these big old red bulbs, these like fuchsia bulbs that have it's fruit that tastes like honeysuckle.
Oh,
it's amazing. And so I took a couple clippings of that, and I'm going to be growing that. I also planted a macadamia nut tree in my yard, and so I'm going to have macadamia nuts.
Is anyone familiar with Dr. Demento? I'm sorry. Totally off topic.
No, what's Dr. Demento? No. What is it?
Just like a musician from like the 60s and 70s, but they have one with words, and it goes, macadamia. Yeah. Ooh. And that's all I could think of.
This will now be a trend. This will be an audio. We'll see.
They wrote the "I'm coming to take you away." Haha, that one. You know.
Okay,
hello,
I am familiar with that.
Hello, father.
Da 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 da.
So you know them. You just don't know them.
Yeah, it's also the tune that was used for Canaan Advantix.
All right.
Yes.
Hello, mother. Hello, father.
Hello.
Fleas and ticks they really bother.
Yes. Okay, sorry. You can continue. That was so rudely interrupted.
Now sponsored by Advantix.
Or we start, and then it just
does.
off the rails immediately. Like,
No, you asked me how I was, and
I
then
love
chaos ensued. That's what happened, and I'm sorry.
Okay, clipping macadamia
So no,
nuts.
no.
Back up.
macadamia nuts,
Yes.
Peruvian apple cactus, and I found a trail in a forest that has like an alligator lake near my house, and I'm going to be going there consistently because it's a beautiful place.
With actual alligators?
Bro, if anyone like
Yes,
alligator lake, my California, not
Yeah.
absolutely
Us
not.
Californians don't do that.
yeah, no, I love all of the scaly creatures everywhere.
It's not that I don't love them, it's that I don't want to hang out with them.
You made them sound like it's like I don't want to be invited to Thanksgiving at the alligators this year. It's not that I don't love them. I just don't want. I can't sit with them.
I'm not chilling at Alligator Lake for another dinner. I'm sorry.
I'm not doing it. Have you heard their politics? I just can't do it. They're so cold-blooded.
We're just gonna hang out there. See what happens.
Okay.
Like, no.
So alligators kind of quack though.
What? Why?
They kind of quack.
This should be like Florida Man.
Yeah, if we could just rebrand that guy where he's not like throwing alligators into restaurants to rob them, that was hilarious. That happened.
I believe it.
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
I will tell this story.
Okay, and so we went from Bethel to Florida Man. Here we go.
Okay. So there's this guy who robbed a Dairy Queen. That's what it was. Via drive-through by throwing an alligator at them through the drive-through window. So let's follow the list. He caught an alligator, and then he went on a heist and somehow made the alligator accessible to him when driving enough that he could grab it, but not enough that it wouldn't bite him until he got to the window.
Right.
And instead of having a gun, what he wanted to do to rob them is he grabbed an alligator and he hurled it through the window at the lady that he was trying to rob.
The disturbing part to me is that he went out and hunted an alligator because, like, that means it wasn't his, and I just feel like it should be his. I feel like he should raise it if he's going to use it.
Yeah, it
would
should
work
be
better.
more like...
I'd be much more terrified of an alligator coming through a Dairy Queen window than a gun.
But no.
It deserved. I thought you said it worked.
Deserved better. Like, this alligator life.
Yeah,
just trying to be a swamp creature, and launched him into a fucking.
You guys flipped on alligators so quick.
It's really smart because if you think about it, he would be arrested with a gun for like lethal intent or like like a murderous action. But if you're caught with an alligator, they'd be like, act of God.
Y'all went full white liberal on alligators. I don't want to see them. I don't want to be around them, but I will defend their rights.
I mean, I ate an alligator once. It was okay. They're okay for that.
They're fine.
They're fishy.
They're fine.
It's like
it's just, you don't know. It is like it's like fish chicken. That's exactly.
Oh no, I'm just saying. So here's my opinion on alligators. It's my opinion on most wildlife.
Yeah.
We should leave them alone.
People say, "Do you want to go outdoors?" And they say, "I'm okay."
Yeah, like, do you want to go to Alligator Lake? No, I don't. That's their house. My house is over here, and I'm gonna stay in it or around my house and go to like non-Alligator Lake. I mean, it's like, that's my opinion. I mean, but
I do want exotic pets. Like, if you were to give me a tiger today, I would accept it. But like, I wouldn't go out of my way to get one because, like, again.
So you don't want to like go visit, but you want them contained in your property.
Yeah, it's just that weird, selfish maternal instinct. I guess I don't know. I need a kid instead.
I really
like when
that's real.
I really wanted to a pet monkey, but now that I'm older, I'm like, I don't deserve a pet monkey. They should live wild.
Like George from TikTok who passed away.
Oh my god, I love.
Yes.
This is your monkey content or something.
Pour it out for George.
So,
pour it out for George.
Hashtag pour out for George, everyone. Cheers. In conclusion, it was a good week. Yes, in conclusion, it was a good week.
May more things come your way.
So we're the best. Okay, like, all right, Bethel. Honey Boo Boo.
So, for somebody who is not familiar with Bethel, for somebody who is just hearing the word for the first time, we introduced it saying that it was included within Christian nationalism from last week, and that spurred us to want to talk about Bethel more. But what is Bethel? If you were giving someone a quick summary, anyone could jump in.
My time has come. So, Bethel Church is first and foremost a church up in Redding, California, and I'm about 4 hours south-ish from Redding. Bethel was founded in 1996, and it was originally part of the Assemblies of God sort of umbrella. And then in 2005, it withdrew and became non-denominational. And part of the reason that it withdrew was because of sort of like a theological differences in understanding, I mean, obviously the Bible theology. Bethel has been pastored since its foundation in 1996 by Bill and Benny Johnson. And it has sort of spawned a number of different ministries and I guess brands. So people have probably heard of Bethel Music. There's also the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. They also have a number of other schools, like a missionary training school. They also have like a coding, like a tech coding boot camp, and a couple of other that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but those are sort of the main ones that they do. And Bethel Music is probably why it's most famous, because they've sort of infiltrated a lot of more mainstream worship with their songs and whatnot.
And I feel like, don't they have a lot of like celebrities on their roster that they kind of tie into that music, like Bieber?
Yeah, so as far as I know, there's been a couple of celebrities.
Is there a connection between Bethel and Hillsong?
I think Hillsong's like the split, right? From Bethel. I'm confused.
I'm not sure about that.
Let's look it up while you're going over the background, so I'll look into it
I'm
real
not
quick.
sure if there's a... Yeah, but definitely Bieber had shouted them out, and then they, that's how they got a lot of, I think, sort of, I don't want to say a lot of fame, but a lot of people were then directed there. But I would have to double check on the Bethel Hillsong connection. I'm not sure.
Well, there's a lot of YouTube videos about how Bethel, Hillsong, and Elevation are the Unholy Trinity.
I was gonna say, I think Elevation is the tie between the two, because it's a very confusing world. It's an empire. That's very obvious.
Yeah.
But I feel like Hillsong
They've married into each other.
Yeah.
Foreign. Hillsong started in New Zealand, right?
Okay, that's what I thought.
And so I think that came over to America, made its huge impact on like New York and LA as their big mega church zones. And their biggest HQ, I believe, is out of Australia. But for some reason, I saw them tied.
But I do think that Bethel music and Hillsong is mistaken. Because I think a lot of Bethel music's like songs or whatever have been picked up by other major sort of like worship-based megachurch.
Like Chris Tomlin has really crossed over with Bethel.
Well, and many of y'all will know about Sean Fucht.
We mentioned him last week.
I think that's how you pronounce it, and he is
long-haired.
Yes, he was the worship leader and does his I don't even know, worship protests where he's like, we don't need vaccines because God will protect us, but also I need the Proud Boys and their guns to protect us in these streets. He was from Bethel, so I mean, like,
that's just like built into the music.
I mean, I think it's all so interwoven that like
you can't separate the theology from the music.
It's
sure.
Like, I'm trying to think of how to say it. Like, he was a worship leader that obviously he bought into their theology, and he was almost impossible to be a member of a church and to try and actively disagree with the theology that they espouse from the pulpit. Like, at least in leadership. Maybe if you're just a parishioner and you don't agree with X, Y, or Z, okay, but if you're going to be in leadership at the church, it's really hard to be actively opposed to the theology that church is putting out there, in my experience. So he was a worship leader for some time, and I don't think he's a worship leader there anymore, but he certainly still has the notoriety that comes with Bethel. And I am almost positive that the worship music that he performs now is probably still loosely connected with Bethel in some way. But, like, he also ran for, like, local government, I believe, like, trying to... He lost, like, resoundingly, but... loser. But, he very much believes that, like, you know, faith should overlap with politics, and, you know, there should be a very specific kind of government, and that government is very much based on how he perceives the Bible, and how he perceives the Bible, I think, is pretty in line with how Bill Johnson perceives the Bible, at least according to the article.
Well, like, how does this man view the Bible, though? Like, here's what I want to know. Like, and I've read a little bit of this, but I'd love your perspective, both of you, on this one. So, I'm familiar with the Assemblies of God. I get that denomination. I understand it. Not my cup of tea. But to need to leave the Assemblies of God, I know two churches left the Assemblies of God because they went the other way and became affirming. So I know what it looks like to leave the Assemblies of God that way. I feel like this is a different move, you know, like it's a different kind of move. So why did they need to move away from the Assemblies of God? Why were they losing funding from the Assemblies of God and identity? What happened there?
That's a good question. I don't know that one.
So to be honest, I don't know exactly why they split, but I do know that it was certainly not to become more affirming, because they are very clear about the fact, and in fact they have a ministry, where they like counsel people that are in the LGBTQ that no longer want to be attracted to the same sex, and so like it certainly wasn't to be more affirming. It was for another. that exact reason, but what I think it was is that they are very, very much based in this theology that Jesus is perfect, which I know many sects espouse, but they believe Jesus is perfect in the regard that, like, if someone is sick and needs healing, Jesus's work is already done, and he wants that person to be healed. So any failing for that person to be healed on earth is a result of a failure of the people around them. Yeah, I know. It's weird. But a lot of their beliefs are weird. And I came from a part of Christianity that very much believed in, gifts of the Spirit and healing and all of these things, right? I mean, like, I had someone in church die of cancer, and I had the preacher from the pulpit pray for her to be raised from the dead, like, at her funeral. So, like, I come from a church very much about this, and it still did not preach this, like, well, Jesus is perfect, the work is already done, so if somebody's not healed, well, it's because...
Here's what I got from the message, and I see where, like, they're problematic in terms of, like, almost their cult-like beliefs, or it sounds like I'm falling into the trap, right? They're heresy, but what I see, it's interesting, because I saw their views on, like, the whole healing parts much differently from, like, the videos I was watching in terms of looking into them, because what they seem to believe is more like the apostolic view, that everyone in the church has the ability to become an apostle, and that they think the issues with current denominations out there is they stopped trying to escalate to an apostle level, and they see it as every Christian's right and duty from God to be blessed with miracles of healing and any kind of other miracles that they ask for, which I don't see as problematic. I mean, it's very problematic, but I don't see it as problematic, because if you full-heartedly believe that there were people doing miracles in the biblical times, and you believe that God is forever, of course you would believe that miracles would still continue to happen to this day, and you'd still believe that people could be blessed with, I guess, sort of powers. Where it becomes really strange is they don't think that Jesus necessarily was God as much as he was an apostle who was blessed by God to have those powers. So in essence, they're saying you can earn these blessing powers just like Jesus did. And that's where people get pissed.
So I think I might have stumbled across another thing on them. This is interesting. So the Assemblies of God is a very specific kind of denomination. You can't just enter the Assemblies of God. Like, if your local church needs a pastor and you have a Master's of Divinity from a seminary, you can't just go, oh, I'll apply there. You have to go all the way through their denomination, through their main office and everything. They could not make more Bethel churches without going through the Assemblies of God Church. They could not have their own network.
Okay.
So, like, it wouldn't be their churches. It would be an Assemblies of God church.
Right.
That they would have to go to the denomination and go, hey, we have this leader. Will you approve this leader? So that they can go through training through you and not us to become an Assemblies of God preacher. But if they separate themselves from the denomination, they could launch their own churches.
Yeah. And I'm also seeing that Bill Johnson specifically had to apologize for originally wanting to leave the Assembly of God. He came back
like in 2005
after the vote and was like, oh, I rescind my vote. I never wanted to actually withdraw or something. I don't get the drama. But
that was
too
weird.
late at that point. They were already out. Which is fine, because that's what they wanted. I don't get the whole dramatic rescind. Like, just go do your thing, Bill.
If you look at the end of the letter, he mentions finances 3 times in a row.
That makes more sense. He didn't have the funding that he thought he had.
Okay. They have raked in over, I believe it's 1.7 million in COVID relief. Jesus didn't believe in socialism, and that's what they voted for him. First of all, kiss my ass.
My
ass.
issue isn't even that they took funding,
Yeah,
like, whatevs. So many people needed to take funding, but they are one of the wealthiest churches because they are so donation heavy and they are so aggressive about it. If you watch any of their sermons online, I'd say probably 70% of that material is about the blessings that you'll receive from donations. It opens with donations, it goes into donations, it talks about tithing some more, and then it closes with donations.
Well, also are very the word I'm looking for. So they have a very large congregation. I believe it's either over 11 or 13,000 people in their Redding church alone. And then they also have offshoots other places, and I don't know exactly how the funding from those like outside, not outside, but the offshoots works. But they have tons of donations, and they also charge for their School of Supernatural ministry. I think it's like $4,200 a year, or like somewhere in there. Still a lot. Yeah, and fun fact, so there's like this big debate issue, whatever, going on in Redding over like Bethel's takeover of Redding as a city, because Redding historically has had some issues economically. So they have had issues with industry. They've had issues with folks and addiction, and so it hasn't been a hub, let's say that, of like, tech or industry or anything like that. And so when Bethel moved in, there was a lot of nothing going on there. And a lot of their sort of like public arenas weren't doing so great. So there was like the civic auditorium that was failing, and Bethel decided to step in and what is it? I have a note here. They did they started a ministry called Advanced Redding in order to save the civic center. And then like when they found out that there was going to be some cops that were laid off, they did fundraising to donate to the police department to keep the cops on, and they're very pro cop, and that is perhaps an issue for another, but like very, very much involved in law enforcement. They call the law enforcement like, do y'all need anything? Like the sheriffs are very much like, when Bethel calls, they're always asking what we need, and it's so great, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, Jesus was a brown socialist executed by the state. Like, y'all think he was super stoked about the cops?
It's not even that. It's just when religion starts trying to put themselves in the pocket of power, questions need to start being asked.
All my red flags are going, like, this is, wow.
Yep. So, and beyond that, I mean, this I can't really argue with, but you see its reach, right? So, like, when the car fires were happening, Bethel gave $1,000 to every family that was affected by these fires. And even if they weren't in the church, it was just thought, like, whoever, whatever family. And I support this, right? Like, I certainly support giving money to people that are affected by these fires if you're going to be an institution that says that you're based on compassion. But I do think that part of this was a major power play to sort of garner support, influence, whatever, and especially in light of the article we mentioned earlier, which is about why Bill Johnson voted for Trump. And the points in that article are, atrocious, and really show like where he stands on the idea of socialism or of government funding for public programs. And seeing like his thoughts on government funding and how it's, basically like it shouldn't be done too much because it will take independence and autonomy away from poor people and will take self-esteem away from rich people.
The usual.
But then being like, hey, no worries, we're going to pass out those like fucking Benjamins, the folks that were by the fire.
Saving face.
Really makes me wonder, like, what was your intention in handing out that money?
The article you mentioned, by the way, for anyone who wants to read it, is from the Gospel Herald, which I can only imagine. Is this Bethel's paper? Well, because the article itself is written by Bill Johnson, so these are in his words.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yes, no, it's an opinion article. It's not Bethel's paper, but it is certainly a publication. And I think he thought he did something posting that article.
Well, it's called, from the start, his position, even though, obviously it's an opinion, but it's called Bethel Church Pastor Bill Johnson. Why I voted for Donald Trump.
Because I'm a racist.
I wish you would have just said it the way you said it. But, some of the quotes in here are just... Of course, he goes into the same talking points of, I found that murder and abortion is wrong, and because Clinton supports that, I refuse to support her. And I found that compassion for aliens is vital. Aliens as in, illegal aliens, is vital. But here again, the responsibility to provide for the safety of our citizens comes first.
But, where is that in the Bible? Where?
It's not. I asked you, where the verse is. America first.
See, this is exactly the religious stupidity stuff we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Real talk, because it's an elevation of any idea that supports the status quo and a deviation from anything religiously affiliated that could oppose the status quo or the sources of power. And that's what he's doing. He's saying, what I think is weird is there's almost some integrity there of him going, I'll admit that this is in the Bible, but there is a higher priority to things that are anti-biblical. And that is so strange for him to be that aware.
He didn't even say that,
you know what I mean?
He quite literally pointed to the Bible in the article specifically. He's saying, he's not pointing out where in the Bible, but he specifically said the Bible teaches us that you have to follow in line with your government, and you have to support your nation. So he's specifically saying that these are biblical values, and he thinks abortion is a biblical, against the Bible in some way or another. He's saying nationalism specifically is called for, and I guess probably how the nation of Israel is asked to band together. I don't know.
Oh, well, he was saying that, we support Israel full stop blindly with no criticism whatsoever, and therefore, if a candidate does not do that, we shouldn't vote for them. And I think the issue for me, first of all, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe we should just support Israel blindly. I think that's stupid. And y'all can fight me on that in the comments. I don't care. It's stupid. But the interesting part for me is how it just puts such an exclamation point on the fact that the entire foundation of modern evangelical Christianity is American exceptionalism.
Looking at the article while you're speaking from Bill, what's his name? So he says specifically, I found that God values each nation uniquely, and that the present move towards globalization is nothing more than a modern Tower of Babel. It's man's efforts towards creating unity through uniformity, instead of being free to celebrate diversity. He's specifically calling out for this exceptionalism and saying that, why are we intermingling with all these other countries? We are just as bad as Babel, because God thinks we should all be separate and unique, not together and united. How terrible does that sound?
Now, for all the people that are listening right now that don't know what American exceptionalism is, what is that?
That America is special and has a special place in God's divine plan, and therefore so much pain and death and suffering can be sort of swept under the rug and justified because it was done in the name of God and country, and America has kind of manifest destiny to do whatever the fuck it's doing. And because America is so special, everything that it does is justified. And America should be number one in all of our considerations.
I think that's a perfect explanation. And I also think it reminded me of this TikTok that I saw the other day, and I don't know the person's I'm sorry, I don't follow her. It just popped up. But she was talking about how country music used to specifically be a form and a method to critique the government, to call people out, especially the police and the military, and because in country there were more of a rebel rousing kind of live free, do what you need to do, respect others and nature kind of a thing. And then as soon as 9/11 happened, this nationalism kicked in the music industry specifically, and specifically around country, where you are no longer allowed to critique the government. You can no longer call out their actions. Whatever they do is just and justified. And we saw what happened with the Dixie Chicks when they said that we shouldn't have been over in Afghanistan, and their careers were shut down by the evangelical and national.
The thing apart about that is that, the Dixie Chicks were shut down about it by the same people who now were like, George Bush was probably in the wrong. Probably shouldn't have gone over there, right? And so it's like, it just shows how there's this, like, I'm not even sure what the word is, but like an immediate clamoring to support whatever is popular at that moment. And especially if it relates to your stance on patriotism.
It's just, I'm fascinated by like these kind of, I guess, like, you know, famous people, whatever you want to call them, the faces of exceptional church leaders. I don't know what to name them. The
like celebrity
ones, like
pastors
Joel
or whatever.
Celebrity pastors. It's fascinating to me. And like I was watching an interview with his nephew. Either his nephew or his partner's nephew. I'm not super sure. His name's Costi Hinn, who is the nephew of Benny Hinn, I guess. So he left the church, and he's been very vocal about it and against it. And I think that's an intriguing thing to watch. But like the main thing that like he talks about is this whole what's the word? There's a word for this, where you are doing your entire doctrine and your entire dogma is specifically around profit, not like profit like with a PH.
Like prosperity gospel.
Prosperity, thank you. So talking about prosperity gospel as a whole, and he's really outspoken and against that. But like the things that he names about like literally them just upgrading through models and models and models of airplanes constantly, and how just their entire mission is really the prosperity, is so confusing to me. I mean, it's not, because people are greedy, but...
So this actually has this isn't the episode. I'll just tag this and be like, fun fact, keep going. Prosperity gospel has an interesting tie to the slave trade. So the African American church in the colonies, the pastor of the African American church would have still, in many cases, been a slave, but he would have been in the highest order of slave. He'd be the one that'd be preaching to the other slaves, and so he would be the most prosperous among the other slaves. And so a lot of the foundations have to do with the white teaching of the black pastor to the black slaves, and that actually continued for a couple generations after freedom. That slave trade moment is one of the birthplaces of of white grace on black life, right. When there was no when African American slaves existed here. That is one of the origin. That is the strongest origin of prosperity gospel in the United States.
So it was essentially them standing up and saying, like, look at all what you could earn and work towards through the blessings of God if you become like me, a good Christian who stays in line. Wow.
Monetizing their trauma, basically. So maybe we can talk about that someday. Oh, okay, so we have 15 minutes. I'd love to talk about prosperity gospel another day.
Sure.
That'd be so dope.
That sounds something that we should get into. I think we still have even more to talk about if we could just throw it in there real quick. Weird doctrines. Like, I know we mentioned this being like a reason why they split from the church, but what about grave sucking? What is Bethel's grave sucking practice?
I feel like our first Patreon sign up thing should be you get a special Bethel episode about their weird doctrine. Like I think that should be the first one right there.
You want to be a grave sucker? It's only
Patreon tier should be called like grave suckers, and then you just go up there. Do you want to be a grave sucker? $3.50. So, from what I understand about grave sucking, Lord have mercy, it is unfortunate to me that I understand literally anything about grave sucking, because I could have gone my entire life without knowing this. But unfortunately, I grew up around way too many weird religious practices. And to my understanding, it's effectively where these folks go and they lie on the graves of spiritual people that have passed away. people that they think have spiritual powers or gifts or whatever. They lie on these graves and perform. I want to say they perform some kind of ritual.
I was going to say, have you seen their prayers, though? Go to YouTube and watch their praying sessions in church, let alone on a grave, and they're insane.
That's ecstatic paganism. Flat out.
I was not a graver, but, like, I fully understand what those prayers are like. Like, fully understand. And they go there thinking that if they lay on these graves and they do this prayer, this ritual, whatever, that they can extract those spiritual powers and gifts from the person in the grave, which makes absolutely no goddamn sense to me, considering that they also believe that that person's soul and spirit and, like, spiritual being is now...
I think they're thinking, this is totally made up, and I could be wrong, I am not a Bethel Church member, but what I would imagine is that as a vessel, we are here, right? Whoop, 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 and we are imbibed with these spiritual gifts from God. And when we pass, our soul then continues up to heaven, and somewhere in there, the spiritual gifts are left here. Because we're now perfect souls. We don't need to bring the gifts with us. The gifts are left in our mortal body. And they're like, oh, if no one's using them, let me extract them.
Well, okay. Let's make it weird. Let's make it weirder. Okay, so, like, I'm trying to think about it from, like, a pagan perspective a little bit, too. So, okay, there are many cultures that see some kind of consumption, whether it be metaphorical or literal, of another being, or, like, the representation of that being, like, invoking the essence of a being over something as some kind of, like, gaining of their essence, right? I mean, that's what communion is.
Yeah.
You know, This is the body of Jesus. This is the blood of Jesus. Eat, drink. That's invocation. Mm-hmm. So like, it doesn't even make sense in, like, witchcraft ways. You think that's what it is?
Yeah, no, because I remember watching them explain it in an interview. They were saying, like, you know, how it's an extension of transubstantiation in the fact that
it's witchcraft.
While communion does this and that, it's specifically, instead of feeding on the body of Christ, it's feeding on the body of Christ, as in its followers. Like,
that sounds like a sermon given by a vampire,
you know,
in a mega church.
I mean, I'm probably paraphrasing, obviously, but
no, like, I think
wrong.
I've seen that episode of True Blood.
Oh, the super, like, religious anti-vampire people.
Exactly.
I can't call it bizarre because it's their belief and whatever. It's just, like, not scriptural. It's bizarre. Well, the thing that I find the most interesting, and maybe it's just me, but I can't find a lot about them, and maybe that's because they're a cult. But the reason I can't find a lot from their own standpoint, like, I want to hear these explanations, is I see a lot from other Christians tearing them down. If you go to YouTube and you type in Bethel, you only get Christians tearing down Bethel. If you go to an article, you get Christians tearing down Bethel. And I find this in-group fighting between Christians so fascinating as well. The fact that they're like, that's not how you do it. No, you don't pray while you're on the ground. You gotta pray standing up. Are you crazy? Like, okay, calm down. Like, everyone here looks crazy. Calm down, Steve. I'm sorry they were wearing shoes and you weren't.
We're all fucking crazy.
But yeah, no. But there's another video that people really like to target on, and it's specifically this Lord of the Rings reference video, where what's the actress's name?
You have
I
my
feel
attention.
so bad. Do I? Okay. It's this actor who I actually really Marlene Barrett. Okay. No, not from Lord of the Rings, but from the Bethel Church. There's a member. Her name's Marlene Barrett, and I used to like her.
Wait,
so
then why
much.
did you mention Lord of the Rings?
Wait, we'll get there. So Marlene Barrett, she's an actress. She's in Chicago Med, and I love Chicago Med. Watch it every week when it's on. And I would have never known she was as cray-cray. So she decided to do a whole entire sermon or movement meeting or whatever for Bethel, where she said that she was divinely inspired while watching Lord of the Rings. Because evangelicals love Tolkien and Lewis. I don't know. But she was watching it and she's like...
Which is crazy because it's so Catholic. It's so Catholic. Like, they wouldn't attend church with these men.
Nope.
But they'll read their fan fiction.
This is 100,000% true.
My mom was like dead set, like you can never watch Harry Potter. All of that is witchcraft.
Let me
yada,
tell
yada,
you,
yada.
Harry Potter did never went as hard as the gross sacrifice of Aslan in Lion, the Witch, and the... That was metal.
That's fair.
Like...
Which I could argue is an extremely Christian narrative.
At least Harry Potter, it was just like some guy with no
absolutely.
nose.
Like, what? What is Voldemort if not fallen? What is Voldemort if not an Antichrist figure? What is the, boy who lived if not Christ?
Yeah. Yeah, and then he
It's
raises
trope.
from the dead. He literally dies, but then he raises.
Hello.
And then he defeats...
It's good versus evil.
the enemy.
It's all the things. I don't get it.
All my family did when they were like, you can't read Harry Potter, it's banned, it's witchcraft. The day I turned 18, I just bought all
of it. I love that we don't know who wrote it. I love that it just showed up on our doorstep one day. It's amazing to me. We can't make out the hieroglyphs.
Yeah, I'm like, JK, I don't know, transphobic, can't...
I talked my dad into watching it because he loved Lord of the Rings, and I was like, I know it's about magic. I'm like, how about you? When the DVD first came out, the first movie, I'm like, you go, sit in a room, you watch it by yourself. If you think it's that bad, then I'll still not ever be able to watch it. But I refuse to keep on going around school with everyone else talking about this book and that book and this book and that movie and be left out because you haven't even tried it. That's not okay. So you go try it and then you let me know. He went, he watched it, and he's like, oh, it's so good. You can watch it. It was so good.
Can we just talk about, how evangelicalism creates the strangest forms of protest? Like, the rebellion of an evangelical teen is reading fiction, and the protest of an evangelical parents is eating 2 Chick-fil-A sandwiches that day. It's just what in the world?
Right. I think we could do an entire episode on how, growing up in the evangelical church and, being taught that you're going to be, the world's going to end and that you are going to be tortured and killed for your faith has created an entire generation of folks who are just, looking for reasons to be persecuted. Yep. And it has contributed panic to this public health crisis.
Oh my gosh.
An episode on that.
I've got such an episode for us. Satanic Panic, yes. I want to do one on the NRA, DC Talk, and Columbine.
DC Talk and Columbine.
They took the NRA's narrative of just but what if that happened at your school? Not, it shouldn't happen anywhere. Let's stand up against it. It's it could happen. Are you prepared to die for your faith?
Yeah. Oh, I was taught very, very intensely. Not that school shootings shouldn't happen, but in fact, when they happened, I should be ready to put a gun at my head and say, yes, I did this, and be killed. And that was a rallying cry. Yep. It was taught at conference church.
At the FCA, at the Federation of Christian Athletes, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, after school, I remember hearing those talks. Mm-hmm. They let these pastors into our schools to tell us someone could come in as easily as I just did. And they would say that, as easily as I did, and they could kill you. And it was yep, this is the messaging we need in this time.
But again, like you said, not that we should fix school shootings, just you should accept your death because obviously they're coming after you because you're Christian. Not let's examine why there's school shootings happening, what can we do to prevent our children from getting offed. No, it's going to happen because it's your fault for being a Christian, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Good job.
I was really kind of talking about this with my therapist earlier, just some of the leftover anger I have with my parents for knowing that this was occurring and knowing that this was the messaging and knowing that this was what was being taught and just being okay with it. Because I just can't imagine I don't want kids, but I can't imagine having a kid and then being you know what I'm going to teach them? This fucking horse shit. Teach them, oh, you're born bad. It's fine. No matter how many good things you do, doesn't matter. You're deserving of death. Useless. And then also you're probably going to be put to death for your faith, but that's fine. That's great. And we're not going to worry about fixing any of the problems around you that are completely fixable. We're just going to tell you that you should be ready to have your head blown off at like 12 years old.
Well, we're more okay with kids getting offed than getting off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like I don't even know if there's a phrase for it, but it's like this persecution porn where it's just like violence obsession. That's why they're always okay with violence in movies. It's
because they also think that when that starts happening, first of all, you're going to be elevated when you're in heaven because you were willing to like give your life, and second, it was like a sign of the end of the world. So Jesus would be coming back for everybody. Well, not for everybody, only the folks that were good Christians. And that's the thing, right? Is that like they thought, one, that you would be elevated in heaven, and two, that the world was ending, and that was a good thing, because then, even though everybody else would be sent to hell to be tortured for fucking ever, they would go up to heaven so they could throw their jagged metal crowns at Jesus. Like, cool.
And on that note, we are out of time for this episode.
Wait. We have to wrap it up because I can't leave them hanging on this Lord of the Rings thing. We totally got off subject.
Oh my gosh, finish the story.
So,
do it.
The one thing that I found for this whole entire thing, and I don't know why it keeps on popping up because I think it's just more hilarious than anything. I guess there's two things. But it's this video. She was divinely inspired by the Lord of the Rings that she needs to have like a staff like Gandalf and then yell, "You shall not pass," because she saw that as him exorcising demons in the form of a dragon on a bridge. And she said the reason why there's racism in the church and it hasn't been cleared out is because they have not used their apostolic powers to band together and do a ritual in the form of Gandalf, and that God told her that she needs to get the church together and do the ritual together, and therefore the day after that there will be no more racism in the church. So she stood up there on stage with like 5 other people looking like they were so confused. And they're just like... And she's like, yeah, we're going to grab the staff and we're all going to yell on 3. And they're just like... Yeah. And they did, and it was just very strange, and the internet is obsessed with it. And it sounds strange, but like I'm like, it's a visual aid for a sermon. Like, that's pretty normal. I've heard sermons about Shrek before. And it's actually not that weird, so I don't know why people are that latched onto it. I think it's the staff.
I don't know. Ritual. I think you have a higher tolerance for weird than you should.
Like, that's normal.
I grew up in that level of weird, and I won't elaborate because we're out of time. But like,
it's
I grew
weird,
up in that level
but
of
like
weird,
if you break it down, like it's
weird.
all weird. Kind of like what I said earlier. Like, it's no weirder than anyone else's weird.
No,
it's all weird.
I think the weird is the claim that she thinks that it would actually work. That's how easy racism is. I mean, she is a very successful and very talented black woman, but I'm sure in her heart she knows you can't just pray away racism. I hope she knows that.
Goodness, I want to bottle the confidence it would take to walk on a stage and say, "Hey everyone, come here. We're going to be Gandalf. No, listen, I'm not finished. We're going to be Gandalf right now, and we will banish racism." No, this isn't representative magic. Come on up.
The staff is just for me to hold. It has nothing to do with anything.
This is just a thing.
All right. We got to wrap it up. Where can I find y'all?
Yeah, you go first.
Oh, it's the same place as always. You can call me whenever. But for the audience, they could find me at Jegaysus if my account still exists in the future. We'll see if these 12-year-olds band together or not. But yeah, Jegaysus on all the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok being the mainstay. If not, find me on Instagram, because that's where I'll probably just stay for a while.
You can find me at Red Sage, the way it's listed with this video, on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and hopefully I won't get banned again as well. So we'll see what happens.
So if you have watched the earlier episodes, you will know that I used to be Mother of Dogs. I'm trying to make my name a little more cohesive across platforms. So on the old TikTok, I am Queen of the Heathens. And on Instagram and Twitter, I am Queen of Heathens with the O being a 0. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll see y'all next week.